Hello. So, newspaper or news article from RTE. Enoch Burke's father jailed for courtroom assault on Garda, right? So we'll have a little read of this. Sean Burke, the father of Enoch Burke, has been jailed for 2 months for assaulting a Garda in a courtroom last year. Last year, right? So the 60-year-old from Castlebar was sent to prison after he refused to sign a bond to be of good behaviour for a year. His daughter Annie was cleared of obstructing a Garda during the same incident. Sean Burke was found guilty last year of assaulting Garda Victoria Fisher in the forecourts during a hearing in the case of his son Enoch, who is currently in prison for contempt of court. Sean Burke's wife Martina was being escorted from the... Look at the wordplay, right? So any non-consensual physical contact is assault, right? Any application of physical force onto somebody is an assault. Now, the problem is that does not seem to apply to Gardaí, right? Because they can couch it in being escorted. We're escorting you from the premises, right? Which means they're putting hands on you to move you out of a place that you want to stay in. So if a civilian does that to a guard, they will be charged with assault. If a guard does that to a civilian, that's just his job, right? And there's far too many people here that condone, promote, support, and fail to see the double standards involved in this, right? Because they're captured by the social role of the guard and his job, right? So guards can do one thing, civilians can't do the same thing, right? Because they'll call it something different, right? We'll continue on anyway. Sean Burke's wife Martina was being escorted from the court on 7th of March last year, but he grabbed Garda Fisher, knocking her down, and she hit a radiator and was bruised. Even though he'd been spared a conviction and would have no criminal record because he'd been given the Probation Act, Sean Burke appealed the verdict to the Circuit Court. So, I'll come back to it, right? We'll continue. However, following a 3-day hearing, he lost the case and Judge Ronan Munro, strange name, convicted him of assaulting the Garda. The judge referred to the uncontested evidence that Sean Burke shouted at Gardaí to leave his wife alone, and he did not accept that knocking the Garda down was accidental. So, yeah, look, he implemented a custodial sentence, or he gave a custodial sentence to Sean Burke for this situation. And look, we don't have video evidence of it. It'd be nice if we did, but you would imagine if the Burke family are what they're being portrayed as, which is belligerent, anti-system, anti-state, anti-court, homeschooled religious fanatics who are absolutely attention-seeking and are a subversive force in terms of the legal system in Ireland, and they are going around assaulting guards, they are throwing their weight around, they're disrupting court cases, all that stuff. You would imagine if this man legitimately assaulted a Garda, right? Because when you hear the word assault as well, you imagine somebody throwing hands at someone and physically battering them, like hurting them. But assault is such a slippery word that it legitimately just means unwanted physical contact, applying physical force onto another person to maybe stop their movement, redirect their movement, or to cause physical contact or to engage in physical contact that is unwarranted, right? So it's very light. So if you're put yourself in this man's position, right? He believes his son is wrong, has been imprisoned maybe wrongfully, or if not that, and he understands the idea of the contempt of court, which of course he does, right? I would imagine he does. I'd bet me my life on it because he's a solicitor, right? His family are solicitors. I'm not sure if he is, right? But his family are. I believe he represented himself as well, so he may be. You're watching your wife being escorted, in other words, being physically moved out of a position she doesn't want to be moved out of, by men, and obviously a female Garda too. So your instinct as a man is to do what? is to go and get whoever's physically touching your wife to stop. Knowing that if I put hands on any of these people while they have hands on my family, I will be in trouble. This is the problem with these sorts of things, right? So if he's walking down and he bumps into a Garda can charge him with assault. And it's interesting that you have the judge here, Judge Monroe, because I've never seen that name before. The judge did not accept that knocking the Garda down was accidental. On what grounds is he not accepting that? Right? On what grounds is he not accepting that? Because we've seen videos of Gardaí pushing members of the Burke family. Like putting hands on members of the Burke family to move them in a specific direction or to increase the pace in which they're moving in a specific direction. That qualifies as an assault. Right? And I've seen one video where hands were put on, I believe it's Enoch Burke's sister, from behind, which absolutely qualifies as unwanted physical contact. Right? Where are the assault charges there? And I wonder, would a judge be so quick to throw in his subjective opinion on this? Was there a jury involved in this? Right? So on what basis is he saying that he doesn't believe that the knocking the Garda down was accidental? Right? And people can kind of go, look, oh sure, like if he didn't do that, then this wouldn't have happened. All that is people explaining away a two-tiered system of justice, right? Where certain behaviours and aggression is allowed from one person based on their job that is not allowed for everyday people. And that opens the door up for abuse of powers endlessly, right? And people will explain that away. And as long as you have a population that continues to explain away two-tiered application of justice and law, you're going to have those in the position who benefit from that continuously abuse their authority and power, right? And we see another example of that now in a second, of this arbitrary sort of stuff. Because I would imagine if this man grabbed this guard and flung her onto the floor against the radiator, and the judge was only offering a suspended sentence, a probation, that doesn't seem to fit with me, right? That does not seem to fit with me. I've seen people go to jail over technically assaulting a Garda when they've been defending themselves, right? I'm sure many people listening to this will have similar experiences where you can 100% say he or she was defending themselves there, and now they're in jail. But the Garda's behaviour prior to that is never taken into account. It's very, very rare you see a guard being convicted of assault when they've blatantly manhandled people. You've seen it at the protests over the last year or two, right? How many assault charges are being given out there, right? So we see another example of that now in a second. So here we have another case of seemingly totally arbitrary application of, what would you call it, state power. The judges, of course, being arbiters of justice, so to speak, in the country, right? But they're obviously paid by the state, right? So there's nearly a guaranteed conflict of interest whenever you're dealing with issues related to people who are protesting anything that the government is doing. And then the person that determines whether you're breaking the law or not, or whether you're doing anything wrong or not, is someone who's paid by the state, paid by this government, right? Paid by you, right? So this is Derek Blighe's situation. And this is from a few days ago, right? So Derek Blighe convicted of abusive conduct after refusing to make charity donation. If that sentence alone does not make sense, right? It shouldn't. There's no logic in that sentence. So Derek Blighe convicted of abusive conduct. Okay, abusive to who? Right? So he was abusive to somebody. Okay, did he try and make amends to that person? And he's convicted of abusive conduct after refusing to make charity donation. Right? So is he guilty of abusive conduct or not? right? The judge seems to think, we'll have a read of it and come back, right? So the anti-immigration activist, an unsuccessful candidate, had last month been given a month to make a payment of €350 to the Irish Refugee Council. Right, so again, nonsense, right? And anti-immigration, look at the way they're phrasing it even, right? So he's been convicted of threatening and abusive behaviour in the district court. Is for anybody that wants to send me on a copy of the Irish Constitution where the district court is in it, please send it. Because he refused to make a charity donation to the Irish Refugee Council. Okay. So, how do you make sense of this one? Derek Blighe appeared before Judge Colin Roberts for my district court. Mr. Blighe, who is the leader of right-wing Ireland First Party, again, not relevant. He faced one charge of threatening and abusive behaviour relating to an incident that occurred in December 2023. This is videoed as well, by the way. You can go and watch it. It was alleged that Mr. Blighe had been abusive toward Mr. Christopher Gomez, the caretaker at Abbey Field, Fermoy, County Cork, a property that was being prepared for refugee accommodation at the time. A previous hearing found Mr. Gomez gave evidence that he was alone in the building and had ordered an oil delivery from a local company. He said that when the oil delivery truck arrived, Derek Blighe approached the driver and spoke with him. So, yeah, we'll go on anyway. You can go and read this yourself, but the ins and outs of it are not really relevant to me, right? The decision-making process is what is interesting to me. So, Judge Roberts found the facts proven in the case and ordered Mr. Blighe to make a donation of €350 to the Irish Refugee Council in order to avoid a conviction, and allowed him 1 month to make the payment. That's my issue with this, right? So, Derek Blighe is essentially found guilty, right, of being abusive to somebody who is readying a home or readying a building for the influx of strangers into this country. So if you find him guilty, then give him, impose a penalty that is relevant to that crime, right? This arbitrary thing of the judge, and you can imagine him kind of tongue-in-cheek, right, but dead serious at the same time, kind of metaphorically slapping Derek Blighe in the face here, right, with the €350 fine to the Irish Refugee Council. So where is this built up from? Obviously, you'd suggest that the judge has some discretion in how he punishes people, but should he? Should he? Should there not be a reconciliation or an agreement being made between both people? Should the judge not be there to facilitate that? Right? Like, how do ye two want to work this out? Instead, the judge, in an attempt, I would imagine, to try and get Derek Blighe to go against his principles, which is, from what I can hear from him, it's not anti-immigrant. It's anti-government imposing unwanted measures onto the Irish people, right? Who these people are is nearly irrelevant. But the judge seems content with it, throwing his weight around and trying to get someone to betray whatever values the judge appears to think that Derek Blighe holds, right? So this sort of stuff, is it conducive to Irish people continuing to have faith or developing faith in the Irish court systems, right? And you can see the issues in America where there's claims of lawfare, right? Where one party or one wing of the government is using the legal system to attack another wing of the government or their opponent in the government, right? And you're starting to see this come to the fore in Ireland as well, with silly decisions like these, right? So either the person's guilty of something or they're not. And being able to have the discretion, if you want to call it that, or the authority to try and get someone to donate money to a cause that he probably doesn't believe in. All that's going to do is antagonize people. And if you pay off this money, then you won't be convicted. What sort of mechanism is that for law in this country, right? Nonsense to me. So they're just two instances, right? And there's more around the country, and there will be more around the country, right? And you're seeing then the sort of two-tiered system where a 60-year-old man, Sean Burke, is being put into jail, while people who are convicted of the worst crimes against children are given suspended sentences. So up until the point where that sort of stuff is ironed out, it is absolutely reasonable to assume that judges are, one, either ideologically possessed, or two, bought and paid for, or any sort of measure that falls in between them two, right? It could be both, one allowing the other one to take place, right? But either way, you have an inconsistency in the application of law in this country. And you don't need to be legalized up to the eyeballs to be able to recognize this, right? That these things are not fair. They're not fair. And that's not crying victim, right? That's not giving out and throwing the toys out of the pram. That is just an absolutely adult and mature assessment of what we're seeing in these courts across the countries. That the application of law is different depending on who's standing in front of the judge, and that absolutely should be gotten rid of. And if the judges and the court systems do not wish to get rid of that partiality, then the whole court system needs to go, and we need to develop something that is far more conducive to trust, right, and a bit of faith in higher order than spats and disputes between people, right? And we had it before, and we probably will need to cultivate that again, because what's going on in the court systems in this country is absolutely disgraceful.